Okay, so here we go. This webinar is the first of a second series. So we did a series back in July and August, and I did a webinar basically the same thing. I've added a little bit to it. So if you happen to be a repeat attendee, then you'll see some similar things and some new things. But this is hopefully going to be interesting for everyone and give you some tips and information about recycling in Louisville. My name is Karen Maynard. I'm the public education supervisor for the Public Works Solid Waste Department and the Jefferson County Louisville Waste Management District. So, and Diane Moon is with me on here as our public education coordinator. So, sorry, I need to get it to let me, okay. So for all of our presentations, I always start with something that looks like this, that helps everybody remember the waste reduction hierarchy. So reducing the waste that you generate is the first thing that you should do. And it's, as much as I talk about recycling, it is our, the thing that we want you to do the most is to try not to make the trash in the first place. And then, of course, reusing items is the second thing to do. And recycling is kind of like, that's great, but it's not necessarily the first thing that we want you to think of to do. So we always want to bring that up during this month and next month when we have more topics. We are going to focus a little bit more on reuse and reduce as well as some topics for future webinars. So if you aren't already signed up, be sure to sign up for more. And if you're on here listening, you're probably kind of on board with recycling already. But I did want to point out some of the important pieces to recycling and why we do it, as far as conserving resources, conserving energy, reducing pollution, and for sure saving landfill space and providing jobs and generating revenue. The other thing, especially for Louisville, it can be kind of complicated as far as our collection system and where to recycle and why it seems to cost some people money and not others and things like that. So just briefly, I'll touch on that. There is curbside recycling collection. You may or may not have that. If you live within the urban services district and have city waste services, then you would have automatically an orange recycling bin shown there in the picture. And then you can purchase a recycling cart, which looks like your garbage cart, except it has an orange lid. And that allows for a lot more space for recycling. So we highly recommend that, even though at this time it is a fee, or you have to buy it. Some of our council districts offer a discount. So check into that first before purchasing full price. And of course, if you live in the unincorporated area outside of the urban services district, you might have to subscribe to a waste hauler on your own, and they may charge you extra for recycling. Some people choose to do that. And also, if you live within a home rule city like St. Matthews or Jeffersontown or something like that, then you might have recycling automatically as part of your taxes for living in that space. So you might have that curbside collection. If you don't, or if you, like maybe you live in a big apartment that doesn't offer recycling, or maybe you just don't want to pay that extra fee every month for recycling, we do offer drop-off locations. So that's what that dumpster picture is there. That's one of our drop-off dumpsters that's considered self-service. So they're just kind of around town, and you can put your regular household recycling in there. There are 3 locations that are staffed. So when you go, typically they would help you and put all your items in the dumpsters for you. Right now with COVID-19, there are some policies that are a little different. So we are asking citizens to put their items in the dumpsters themselves, and they separate a little bit more there. Since it's staffed, we can do that. And then, of course, there's items that are recyclable, but maybe you shouldn't be putting them in your curbside bin or in our drop-off dumpsters. So plastic shopping bags, for example, those can go back to stores. Electronics. Some stores accept electronics, and we also offer an electronics recycling program on Meriwether. And the latex paint I still have on there. That program is a partnership with Habitat Restores, and that's been suspended. So for now, we do not have latex paint recycling, but I hope it starts back up. So understanding all of this, there's a lot of questions I get. People are skeptical about whether items are really recycled. They hear things about China. They aren't even sure what they can recycle. There's various rules that people ask about. For example, lids and labels and how clean, and why is it different for this person versus me, things like that. So in order to kind of get to those questions, I like to start out answering questions kind of about the whole entire process, like where does the material go, how is it sorted and processed, and when does it get made into new items. So we'll go over a lot of that. So to start off with talking about where the material is processed, that's kind of a fun recycling term. We call it a MRF, a Material Recovery Facility. So we have one local MRF, and it is Westrock Recycling. So if you have followed anytime I talk about recycling on Nextdoor or wherever you might see things that I post, I usually mention something about Westrock because that's the company that owns our MRF here in town. It is located off Fern Valley Road, kind of behind the Sam's Club that's on Preston, if you're familiar with that area. And we have Rumpke is a waste hauler here in town, and they have a transfer station here. But they also own a MRF in Cincinnati that's really a big and state-of-the-art facility. And so they're able to actually collect the items here in Louisville and sort and process them in Cincinnati. So that comes up a lot because if you have Rumpke as your waste hauler, then your rules about what can go in your bin might be a little different because in Cincinnati, they have, and a different company, they have different markets and accept different things. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along. And please feel free, if you know you have Rumpke as your service provider, then you may have some more specific questions for me, and that's fine. So the next several slides are videos that are from Westrock Recycling, and this is kind of what it looks like. If you ever get a chance to tour, it's really neat to see. So I have these videos, they're short clips and they keep repeating. So I'm gonna kind of go over what you see happening there. This is what you might call the tipping floor. At the beginning of the screen slide there on the right, you can see a truck. I think that one happened to belong to Republic, and it was tipping their truck and dumping the recycled material that they had collected into that giant pile. And then the scooper there is part of Westrock's staff, and they're moving it, and they're kind of putting it into this stream right here. So basically, on the other side of that is where the material is being dropped by that scooper truck. And it kind of gets tumbled a little bit to sort of loosen it up. And then it comes down onto this conveyor. And there are people there that are kind of doing the first sort. So they're taking some things off of that conveyor. If you watch it, it repeats, I know, but what you mainly see happening is the plastic bags being taken off. You might be able to tell they do try to empty those. It's kind of a hard process. If they're a black bag, sometimes they're not emptied because it's likely trash, and they have different chutes that goes into. So basically the idea here is that all that material is about to go into a process that involves a lot of machines and turning mechanisms. So they want to grab things off that would get tangled up in that or cause problems. So they're getting the first look at it. And then when it gets past them, this is where it goes. And this is basically separating the large material, like the big pieces of cardboard specifically, from everything else small. So the smaller things fall through down below and continue on to other machines that sort, and then the cardboard is kind of riding on top. And beyond that, there's still more people grabbing things off because after that, the cardboard is by itself and it gets to the end of that conveyor and just falls down. And that is one of the first places where it has been successfully sorted into material type. So that's the goal, trying to get all the materials separated out, because as you know, if you recycle, then all the stuff is sort of mixed together. It's called single stream recycling. And there is this long process that it has to go through to get separated back out. So that's all cardboard. And then another part of it, some of those containers, once it's kind of got containers separated, there is this is passing through an eddy current, and that makes aluminum jump. So those aluminum cans, you can kind of see them in the darkness there jumping up, which sends them over the edge here into this giant pile. So this is another place where they have successfully sorted all of that into one material type. So this is aluminum cans. And then in the foreground there, you can see eventually they're going to be baled, and that's what a bale looks like. This is just another conveyor. You can see down below in the left part of the screen that there is another staff person. You know, there's definitely people all around. Even though machines do a lot of the work, it does require people to kind of monitor everything. That conveyor belt is kind of interesting because it's sort of bumpy. So it allows the two-dimensional objects like paper to ride up while the more three-dimensional things kind of get bumped down. And eventually the material gets sent through a baling machine. So this cardboard's being sent through and it's being all packed up and held together by wire. And then it's kind of ready. So it's like a product ready to be sold at that point. So there's some pictures of some bales, and then right there on the outside, if you're standing and looking at that baler machine working, all you have to do is turn to the left and you see where the train tracks are, and trains come through, and that's the most cost-effective way to ship things. They also ship by truck, but a lot can fit on a train. So I put some things up here, some information we have from Westrock. They've shared with us where a lot of the material goes. So, so you can kind of see that about how much they bale and sell per month, and also where that is being sent. People are very concerned about plastic, and that at this facility, the plastic is all baled together, and it is then sent to a facility in Missouri where they further sort those different types of plastics out. And then I listed some of the things that are made from that plastic. And same with glass. All the glass actually goes to a Rumpke glass facility in Dayton, Ohio, and another place in Indianapolis. This facility has a lot of cardboard come through. And Westrock actually, as a company, owns paper mills as well. So some of their paper mills, some of their paper and their cardboard goes straight back to Westrock, which is very helpful for them as a business. And then, of course, you see 2,000 tons of paper come through. We use, it goes to maybe Kimberly-Clark in Owensboro. So as you can see, it's staying in our region. So the material, number one, it has not been and is not sent overseas. People often hear things about China and how they banned recycling. Our U.S. is recycling going there, which is true and did cause some problems with recycling in the United States. But for us here in Louisville, just because of our location, we weren't, and remember when I say we, I mean Westrock, which is a company I don't work for. But the material processed here in Louisville was not sent overseas to begin with, and still isn't. So I think I have a little more on that in a bit, but I did want to make sure that was understood, since people often have a lot of concern about China and where our material is going. So I feel very confident. Westrock shares with us a lot of information about where the material goes, and it stays here in our region. Okay, so does all the material get recovered? That is this picture that you see on the screen. I took that of the floor of a section of Westrock Recycling's facility. So the things you see there are very small items, like plastic lids and straws and even some shredded paper. I see a plastic fork. So all that material, that is not recovered. So it doesn't mean that no straws are ever recovered or no lids are recovered, but it's possible that it's not due to its size. So it's not really hurting anything. The other stuff that's not recovered would be things that weren't accepted in the first place. I've been there. I think one of my videos shows a shoe, going along the conveyor. So obviously that wasn't something that we say to recycle, and that's not going to get recovered. So at this time, our latest number we've heard from Westrock is that about 8 to 10% is considered contamination. And that's a pretty good number, actually, but it has gone up slightly since the virus started. So they're definitely seeing a lot of plastic shopping bags and styrofoam takeout containers. So we'll talk a little bit more about what's accepted and everything, but we have a pretty good contamination rate, considering if you compare us to the rest of the nation. So, okay. Okay, so now I'm going to bring up, this is something I've added because I've gotten a lot of questions online about the information heard in documentaries and online. So I want to kind of address that. Plastic Wars is a documentary done by PBS, and then there was an article in September through NPR, and that's kind of a little bit of a screenshot of it there on the screen, and kind of bringing out some information about the history of plastic. And I'm going to move my little tabs here so I can see the quote. The quote's kind of long, but this came straight out of the article from NPR. And then the quote at the top came straight out of Plastic Wars, the documentary. So I get this quote and the idea of that larger section there sent to me a lot, asking about it. But also when it comes to me, the question, it's usually misquoted. So I just want to kind of address that. The quote in the documentary said, no more than 10% of plastic produced has ever been recycled. But I think when people hear that, a lot of times what I hear them think it says is that no more than 10% of what I'm recycling in my bin is getting recycled. And that's not what that's saying. And then the quote on the right from the article, I think, brings up very good points about how plastic can be made into new things, although it does degrade over time. But unfortunately, it costs a lot of money. It can be expensive to do that, while at the same time, getting brand new plastic made from oil is cheap. So this is a problem that has been forever. And I think they did a good job as far as in the documentary. The plastic industry tried to sort of, or at least what the documentary says is that the plastic industry kind of tried to gloss over that and not let the public understand what's really happening. So I think it is important for these documentaries and these articles to bring up that point and to make people kind of understand better. But it is also important to know that what's happening to the material in your own local recycling program. You know, they have some information about what happens in Oregon, but what you need to focus on would be what is happening in Louisville. And then also the part about, like in the part where it says in all that time, less than 10% of plastic has ever been recycled. I did click on the link where that information came from. It's from the EPA, who gets a lot of their information from the American Chemistry Council. It can be hard to kind of understand statistics like that. I was having a hard time. But the important thing to note is that this is not referring to just plastic that someone tried to recycle. Okay, so there's, as you know, if you walk around town, if you go down to the Ohio River, wherever, you know that there is a lot of plastic not actually in being someone trying to recycle. So there are people that don't recycle. So there's going to be plastic in the landfill, that's for sure. So the bottom line is, as far as plastic, try to reduce your use of plastic. Avoid single-use products, avoid plastic products that you know aren't recyclable, and recycle what you can, and then understand that recycling doesn't always make money. So sometimes businesses have to make decisions based on money, and luckily for us, our local recycling facility has not chosen to stop recycling something just because it's not the biggest moneymaker. So that's good for us. And okay, so now we're going to get into kind of some of the nitty gritty. If you are on here, you probably want to understand a little bit more details about what's recyclable. But if you don't, this is really all you need. This is our flyer. It's on our website. louisvilleky.gov/recycling. You can download this flyer and you can kind of see the basic things that are recyclable. Everything in the photos is accepted. So, you know, that's one way to look at it. And then when you read kind of the descriptions there, that helps too. So people often ask about plastic and the numbers, and just want to make sure everyone understands that the numbers are there on the plastic containers that indicate what type of plastic it is. It's called a plastic resin number. So even though that can be useful to know, it is not, the recycle symbol on it really means nothing. And they talk about that in that documentary about plastic as well, that they refused to remove that symbol, even though it kind of was a little misleading. So the number in the photo there, you can see number 1, there's a number 6, a number 2, a number 5, and a 7. So what you need to know for anyone with city recycling or any other hauler besides Rumpke, they say they accept numbers 1 through 7. Which seems pretty easy. There are some exceptions to that, and we'll get to those in a second. But Rumpke and sometimes other facilities, they don't talk about numbers at all. They talk about shape. So Rumpke for plastic is a bottle-only program. So they want their containers to have a more narrow mouth of the bottle than the base. So think yogurt tub. That counts that out. Okay, so so that's Rumpke customers. And so I guess that's it about plastic and its numbers. It's just, don't really have to worry about it too much. And then here are exceptions. And first of all, I kind of wanted to explain why there are exceptions. Sometimes it's the market. Sometimes it's because there's just no market. And why would you collect something if you can't sell it? So, so that's a decision that has to be made. Luckily, we don't have too many changes happening. Westrock and their staff kind of understand that making big changes, you know, kind of going back and forth, it's hard to change behavior of citizens. So it's not always in your best interest to kind of stop taking something just because it's not as cost effective at that point, and then put it back in. So you can't really keep doing that back and forth. People won't get it. And then safety. Sometimes it's safety, like we don't want scrap metal. We don't want lithium batteries, even though those are items that can be recycled. Putting them through this system can be very dangerous, especially the batteries, because they're a fire hazard. Tanglers are anything long and stringy, including plastic shopping bags, any kind of cords. You might, someone might think, oh, this should be, it's a metal chain, it's recyclable. But if it gets through this process, it gets all caught up in all those gears we saw. So that photo is of some people during a shutdown. They had to get in there and kind of clear some stuff out. Those plastic shopping bags get all caught up in there. So it's best just to keep them out and take those to participating retail stores instead. And then just cost effective. Styrofoam, for example, is recyclable if you have the right equipment. It needs to be densified because it's like plastic that's been puffed up with air. So it needs to kind of be brought down to its original form. And that takes equipment. And that's equipment that Westrock has not invested in. And in order to ship that somewhere else to densify it is not cost effective because you're basically shipping air. So anyway, so the bottom line for that is styrofoam, it has a 6 on it because it is polystyrene, but it is not accepted in our recycling stream. Now, it's not going to contaminate and hurt a bunch of things, but it is coming out of the stream and going to the landfill anyway. So you might as well just know what to do with it in the first place. And that's to try to avoid it if you can, even though I know with takeout right now, a lot of restaurants use it and it's hard to avoid that. So just do your best and then it goes in the trash. And then I have a picture of here on of motor oil bottles, because that's just an example of a plastic bottle that would normally, yes, be recyclable, but it contained a household hazardous waste. So, so something like that shouldn't really be put in with your recycling, and it can't really be rinsed out like food containers. All right. So, all right. And another thing people ask a lot about are labels. You don't have to remove the labels off containers. Lids. Plastic lids are actually best kept on. We would ask that you crush the plastic container if you can and put the lid back on. If it's a metal, like this jar there, if it's a glass jar with a metal lid, you can detach and recycle those detached. And then I did want to just kind of mention that there are some organizations that collect plastic caps, because there's a program, I think it's done in Indiana, but it's kind of a somewhat local program where you collect caps and create benches out of them, which is a neat program. So if anyone's collecting those separately, of course, that's a great way to recycle those caps. Otherwise, put them back on your bottle. People often ask about whether or not to clean their recyclables, or if they have to be clean. They do not. Our main goal is for you to empty any containers. So we don't want you to have a bunch of food left in it. If you are eating peanut butter or yogurt, scrape out as much as you could physically do, and then it's ready to go. And if you want to rinse your material, that's fine, especially if you're putting it in a container that sits in your house, or it's going to sit for a week. You might want to give things a rinse. I know in my house, our ice cream containers get a rinse usually, and maybe soup cans, tomato sauce, things like that. Just kind of give it a little rinse so it's not oozing as it sits in your container. And because it can cause an odor, it can just get gross. It can cause pests, especially in the summer. So that is more for you, although the staff at the recycling facility don't mind it. If it's a cleaner, it is. But it's not something we would tell you have to do. Sometimes people get turned off by too many rules. So it depends on who we're talking to as far as how much we say, because we don't want someone to say, forget it, I don't want to recycle because it's too much to do. Pizza boxes are also another item that people, there's a lot of mixed messages about that. Please don't Google that, because there's all kinds of sources out there that tell you not to recycle pizza boxes because they can't, because the grease makes it not recyclable. But Westrock actually did a study recently, and I shared the article on Nextdoor recently, that they did a study and asked paper mills if that caused problems, and nobody really said that it did. There's no problem there with that grease. So especially because the volume of cardboard, if you remember, Westrock's getting 10,000 tons of cardboard per month. It's not all greasy pizza boxes. So it's definitely the volume of that little bit of grease is not a problem at those paper mills. So please recycle pizza boxes. Now, don't leave your old crusts and peppers and butter tubs in there, but please do recycle the cardboard. I also wanted to kind of bring up packaging from things that you get in the mail, because right now, well, even before COVID, we all liked, I'm sure, to order things off Amazon. It's very convenient, but even more so now, it seems there's just more and more things that you can just order online, and it's a lot easier and you don't have to go out. So Amazon packaging, I wanted to address, obviously the cardboard, we want the cardboard. The bubble envelopes there that are just all plastic and bubble wrap, those aren't really accepted in regular recycling. So you can put those, though, if you recycle plastic shopping bags. Kroger has a great infographic of all the types of plastic you can put in with your plastic shopping bags. And it includes a lot, including like the big overwrap of like toilet paper and things like that. So, so check that out and try to recycle as much of that plastic as you can at stores, including the bubble wrap and bubble envelopes. Now, the ones that are paper and plastic, that's tricky. I don't know if you can separate those. Might be best to try to give them away to someone who could reuse. I've had a few questions recently from people because they've ordered like HelloFresh or a meal service like that. There's a lot of crazy packaging that comes in those boxes. So they're very good about trying to give you instructions on how to recycle, but it's hard to be accurate when you're a national company because not everybody does the same thing. So again, if you like the big frozen things, if you drain them out like it says to do, I would just recycle that plastic with your plastic shopping bags instead of trying to do anything else with those. And styrofoam inserts, if you've purchased something big like a TV or something and it comes with a big block of styrofoam, that not accepted. It's a type of plastic that we can't recycle curbside. So the only option we have for those big inserts, this is not for food packaging, but the big blocks of styrofoam can be recycled through foam fabricators in New Albany. On our website, we have the hours and you can drop off as long as it's clean and free of tape and stickers. You can drop that off there and it's a great option to not have to put it in the trash. But if you don't want to or whatever, can't get to Indiana, trash is the way to go for that, not the recycle bin. And another question we often get is whether or not recyclables can be bagged. And we do ask that you recycle items loose in the container. And the only exception to that, which I often forget to say, is shredded paper. So as you saw in the picture of all the little bits on the floor, there was a lot of shredded paper in that. So to contain it and not have it go everywhere, you can put shredded paper in a clear plastic bag so they can see through it. And you can recycle it that way. I understand some people still have the small bins, so do your best to recycle items, heavy items on top of the light items to be able to pack your bin well, but also you might want to look into getting a larger cart through the waste hauler or through the city if you can buy one. And let's see, I don't see a question. I thought maybe Diane was telling me that there's a question. Let's see.
Karen, there is a question. The
yes,
question is all about cartons of milk and half. These have coated paper and plastic caps. Is the coated paper container recyclable with or without the cap?
Okay, so thank you. As far as cartons go, your regular paper cartons, I think of milk, orange juice coming in a paper carton. It has that plastic spout and cap. That is all able to be recycled. It doesn't really matter if you leave the cap on or off. I'd say if you have the ability to recycle that cap through a bench program, like I mentioned, to do it that way. But it's okay to recycle that paper carton like it is. There is another type of carton. If you look at it, it'll say Tetra Pak on it. And I personally have really only bought chicken broth or something that comes in Tetra Pak. Sometimes juice boxes are that way, where they're just a little bit different they're not all paper. Westrock does not accept those. They don't have the ability to sort. They would have to sort that out by hand, and they don't get enough or have a market for it that makes it cost effective to collect those. So those would be kind of sorted out and trashed. It's a little bit like styrofoam. They just don't take it. So now Rumpke does take Tetra Pak. So talk about confusing. But that's a different type of carton. I'm not sure if you were asking about. Hopefully that answered that question. I think this is getting close to the end here. I do want to mention we do have with the app that we have is called Recycle Coach. It is specific information to Louisville, so it's a great resource. If you download that app, or if you just want to go to it online, louisvilleky.gov/recyclecoach. There's a link there to download it on the app, and also you can just use it right there on the website. You can type it, there's a search bar, so you can type in anything, and it tells you the best way to dispose of it, which would lead to addresses and everything if you have to drop it off. And also, we've had a lot of events, these webinars. We have a waste drop-off event coming up Saturday. That's kind of a monthly thing we're doing during the months from March to November, so that we're going to have another next month, and then it'll pause for winter. But some of that's on the calendar there. So even if you don't have city waste collection, having that calendar and being able to see some of our waste events is really beneficial. We're going to have a big waste tire collection event early November as well. All right, so let me make sure. Okay, here we go on questions. I'm going to try to open this up so I can see it. All right. Where did you say to find this guide to recyclable items? So on our website, louisvilleky.gov/recycling, there's a few options on that page that kind of get more specific about recycling. But on that page, there's the first one is what can I recycle? So if you click that, then it's going to lead to a whole list of everything that's basically accepted in recycling, and you can download the flyer there. I do have, the flyer isn't really on there because of the fact that our website can be translated, but if it's just a picture of words, it won't translate it. So, and if there's any other specific items, I think it's Jerry Owens is asking me, you are welcome to email me or go ahead and type some more questions. I can see it now. So that's up to you. Let's see, paper towels. I have not looked at, first, I noticed that paper towels and tissue were on Kimberly-Clark's list to recycle. In your recent email response to me, no, we typically don't say that paper towels or tissues should actually be recycled. That's interesting. I would have to look into what Kimberly-Clark as a company is saying. So I'm not so sure about that, but typically it's just kind of a type of paper that isn't accepted.
Karen, I would probably say too, that there's a health hazard with the paper towel and what's being absorbed into that paper, if it's a biohazard or, you know, that is probably not a recyclable thing within the paper towel. So
the explanation of that info was on what we just presented. If you're referring to the slide that mentioned Kimberly-Clark, that was saying that the paper, the actual paper, like regular paper, when you recycle that, the Westrock Recycling is baling all of that paper and selling it to Kimberly-Clark to be made into paper towels. So it's not that the paper towels are being recycled into paper towels, it's that our regular office paper is being recycled and then made into paper towels. So, so at that point, once it's a paper towel, it can't really go back to recycling. So yes, I think that answered the question. Sorry, that was confusing. Let's see. All right, flimsy paper like receipts, wax paper, windowed envelopes. Windowed envelopes are okay. You can just recycle them as is. You don't have to take off the plastic. Receipts, that's kind of tricky. They are accepted. There are some receipts that are made out of a thermal paper, and it's kind of hard to tell. But that kind of paper is, there's been some issues with BPA being part of it. I think a lot of it's being made without it now, but that's more of one of those weird health hazards. But to be simple, yes, all of that paper is accepted. I've asked recently about, let's say you went to purchase a hamburger, like at McDonald's or Wendy's or something, even that wrapping is accepted with Westrock. So yes, the sandwich bags, thicker plastic, like what paper plates might be packed in, that's the kind of plastic that the easiest thing to ask people to do is to recycle that with your plastic shopping bags. But technically, the thicker plastic that's like overwrap, we call it stretch film, and like Ziploc bags, it's different than plastic shopping like Kroger bags. But that kind of plastic, technically, if you bundle a whole bunch together in kind of bag in bag, so it's more of a clump, technically Westrock will accept it that way. But that can be kind of hard to teach. So typically in my short answers, I just tell people to put that in with your plastic bag recycling at the store. And then foil, aluminum foil is definitely okay to recycle. If it's completely covered in oil and food, that should just go in the trash. But yeah, if you just used it maybe to cover something and don't want to reuse the piece, you can definitely recycle that. Chewing gum wrappers and any other candy wrappers are going to be a no. I usually do a post about that close to Halloween, just to remind people that that those wrappers, not to litter them, and also that they'll just go in the trash. Thank you for those very specific questions. Is there anything else? Thank you. All right. We'll wait a couple minutes just in case anybody had any other things to ask, but and let's see, I do have another slide here that just shows some of the places where you can find some information. If you type in No Waste Lou on YouTube, you can find a little page that has some videos I've made. Our Facebook and Twitter is No Waste Lou, and then the website, you can go to nowastelouisville.org. So some of those things that, like the webinars are on that website and everything. So you can find some information there. Now the nowastelouisville.org is technically our waste district page. So you can also find interesting information about the district and what it does. Let's see. Thank you for that, Dr. Roy. Good to hear from you. Let's see. Another question I see is what household chemical containers shouldn't be included? I'd say only containers that you can't rinse. If it's empty, the motor oil and stuff can't really be rinsed. So that's probably the only one. But past that, you know, if you can kind of dilute, it's okay. If you've emptied your chemical containers, just kind of rinse and dilute it. It's perfectly fine to recycle. The little tiny sauce containers that are usually plastic and the lids, those again, that kind of gets to this recyclable versus recoverable. So although it is recyclable, those little plastic things, as long as they're empty, they're small. So sometimes they don't actually get recovered at the facility just because of their size, and they just sort of fall through all those screens and end up on the floor, like in that picture. But again, you're not hurting anything to try because that might make it into the big bale of plastic. So yes, those.
Karen, sometimes if it's the same number as something else, I put it inside that bigger thing so that it can get recovered.
Yes, that's true. As long as it's the same, same type of material. Yeah.
Yes.
The question is there a way to bundle or bag small items? Not necessarily. I think it would have to be a really large load. Sometimes we get calls, you know, if you were a business and you just got a lot of the same material, that you might be able to work with Westrock on your own for delivering some material to be recycled. But as far as just household stuff, it's not really good to completely bundle things, especially not knowing exactly what type of maybe material it is, because you don't want to bundle things into something that's a different material. If you choose to put anything in bags ever, always make sure those bags are see-through, because as a safety concern, the staff on that sorting line don't really have to open up bags that they can't see through. So it's very important that they can at least see, oh, this is a whole thing of shredded paper or whatever, and it gets sort of pushed to a different spot to be recovered later. Good questions, everyone. Shredded paper be put in paper shopping bags. We do say that it is better to put it in clear plastic bags versus the shopping bags, just because of helping keep it contained, because in the truck and movement and transportation, it can probably come out of paper bags, even though logically, yes, you know, paper and paper, but it's just kind of likely that it's going to get everywhere eventually. So I personally save a lot of plastic bags, whether it's through shipments that I've gotten, or even like I mentioned toilet paper overwrap. I try to open that, like a giant thing of it, enough to make it that when I take all the toilet paper out, it's like having a garbage bag. So I do things like that to avoid having to buy more plastic bags. So can get creative on that. Let's see, is there a limit to the number of items brought to the special monthly recycling events? No. there's not, which is great. That's a great way to get rid of bulky item, household trash, not really trash, like an old dresser or something that's just completely broken or whatever. It's a great way to get rid of that. And there's no limit. The drop-off waste disposal event, if you go to, this is something we were supposed to start in March, but we've only had one so far because of COVID. So our second one is this Saturday. But the idea is that we're going to move these events. We're calling them pop-up drop-off events, and they're moving around the Southwest area, like off Dixie Highway area, and then somewhere more central, and then somewhere in the East End. And we keep rotating around the county that way a little bit. And we're accepting the bulky waste. We're accepting yard waste too, as long as it's kind of prepared like you would for curbside. All this is on our website, louisvilleky.gov/pop-ups. So you can put that in and see our flyer and see all the info that we're taking. The council people are partnering with us and getting a shredding truck. We're asking the sheriff's office to have a prescription medication drop-off. We're going to have scrap metal and appliances that can be recycled that way. We're trying to recover as much of the material as possible. So if you load up your car with a bunch of stuff, try to keep it into its separate types so that way it can all be recovered. Wooden pallets can go in with yard waste and be recovered that way. Electronic devices, you did ask me a limit. I'm so sorry. There is a limit on the number of electronic devices. And I believe it's 3. And tires, you can bring in some tires as well. I think we did put maybe a limit of 4 on that. But this one Saturday is on Newburgh Road, 3515 Newburgh Road. It's at our Metro Fleet Services parking lot. So if you've got some stuff to get rid of, it'll be there. And then November 21st will be the one in the East End. The location is not nailed down yet. So, but the date is November 21st if you want to mark it down.